and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, good morning and welcome to the March meeting of the Clinton County Council. Another exciting agenda as always. We'll begin as per usual with approval of the most recent meeting minutes, this time being the February 8th, 2022 meeting minutes. Clark or Jeff, you're usually the two that have reviewed that.
Yeah, I was absent.
Oh, that's right, okay.
I did review those. Janet sent them to me a week or so ago, and I didn't see any problems with them. I'd make a motion to approve the February 8th minutes as written.
Okay, I have a motion to approve, a second by Jake. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries.
6.
Well, we got two that I believe abstained, so 4-0 with Jeff and John abstaining. You have in your packet the probation report, a good month in February with $0 spent, so we're off to a good start for 2022. Community corrections, we got Brett with us here today.
Morning.
Morning.
Good morning. This morning we have 77 clients on our program. 9 are on CTP. We have 1 juvenile and nobody on pretrial. Rocco, our canine's working out well. He's already got some drugs and paraphernalia off the street and led to 1 arrest, so we're real happy about that. Recently we've really started using our social media page. We are posting our escapees and our failure to returns, and we've done that for the last 2 weeks, and that led to an apprehension over the weekend, so we're
Really?
happy about that with the community's help. 180's up and going, now, and we've sent 2 of our clients out there, 2 of their first 3, and hoping to get them up off the ground and hoping for some successes out there. That's really about all I have this morning. Any questions?
Do 180 referrals from corrections come with any money, or do those individuals pay their own?
Pay their own.
They pay their own, okay. Okay, good. I'm glad you're utilizing that.
Absolutely. All right, thank you.
Any questions for Brett?
No.
Okay. That brings us to the new business part of our agenda. We have Curtis Herring from Central Dispatch speaking on ARPA monies.
Well, I don't want to take up much of you guys' time. You guys have already heard everything we have to say about it. I just wanted to see where we're at with that.
Fair enough. Your appearance on the agenda prompted me to go ahead and give a more full-fledged report of the ARPA committee. And I've distributed to the rest of the council a copy of that report. So I want to start, because we have a new council member and because our attendance at the meetings changes over time, I'm going to start kind of at the beginning and give a brief review if you don't mind. The background of this is that the county, as a part of the Federal American Rescue Plan Act, received stimulus monies in the amount of $6.3 million in 2021. Actually, we received half of that amount in 2021, with the other half to be received just here this summer in 2022. Those funds have to be approved for use by the end of 2023 and have to be spent by the end of 2026. This is unique funding to any other funding in the county in the sense that it has to be approved by both the council and the commissioners by the federal legislation. So in order to expedite that process, because getting 10 people together to discuss can be a difficult task sometimes, we did create an ARPA committee that consists of Commissioner Jordan Brewer and then council members Dunn, Beard, and Chenoweth, along with the auditor. And so that committee has now met a couple of times. I was selected to be the chair of that committee. We've met formally twice, and we've had numerous communications by email. One of the first tasks that we had was to try to determine what the goals and overall objectives were going to be for how we approach the expenditure of these funds. And we came up with 3 priorities that we wanted to try to have as our guiding principles. One was we wanted to invest these funds in projects that were going to have a long-term benefit for the community. 2, we wanted to use these funds in a way that provided the maximum benefit to the maximum number of people in the community, either directly or indirectly. And 3, we wanted to leverage these funds whenever possible to bring even more funding and benefits to the county. So in other words, use a portion of these to potentially be grant matches for additional grants that could expand our total. A key thing that's happened since our last report, our last discussion here, is that the United States Treasury has issued a ruling that clarified how the monies could be spent. The initial legislation had 5 enumerated, very specific enumerated uses that counties could spend the money for. Now, they were fairly broad classes, but they were enumerated uses. The Treasury here recently, within the last few weeks, broadened the scope and relaxed those rules quite a bit. And they said that any political subdivision that received less than $10 million essentially could spend that money on any approved governmental use, with the exception of those specifically prohibited in the legislation. So examples of that would be, we cannot use it for debt service. We can't make it one of our bond payments with this money. We cannot fund pension obligations with this money, so we couldn't put it towards the sheriff's pension. Or 3, elected officials are specifically exempted from receiving any of the money. So if we did any sort of a bonus structure, it would by definition or by law not be able to include an elected official. So that gave a lot of clarity for moving forward that we didn't have prior to that ruling. The other thing that we've done is we've tried to reach out to get outside counsel and guidance from people who are more expert than we are, that deal with this kind of thing every day in their real jobs. We've reached out and have a retainer agreement with to pay an hourly fee, but to work with Baker Tilly, the municipal advisory firm that we work with on many issues. But they have people dedicated to knowing this legislation inside and out, what we can and can't do, and giving us advice for appropriate projects or uses. We also have had extensive communication with Ms. Colette Childress from the Indiana Farm Bureau. She's the local government policy advisor, and she's been a tremendous help. She formerly, in her previous work life, worked for the state of Indiana through the Office of Community and Rural Affairs, OCRA, and so she has an extensive knowledge of what some of the other uses, other pots of money might be that the county could utilize and leverage. One of the things that's been a consistent message from our consultants has been not to move too quickly, and that as this massive piece of federal legislation gets the flesh put on the bones, a lot of the rules and a lot of the uses and a lot of the grant opportunities are still being developed, and the rules for those are just now being published. So one of the things she advised was, let that all happen before you decide how you move forward, because there may be a grant opportunity that you could utilize some of your funds as a match, and you've got to have that money still in place to utilize the other opportunity. A couple of examples of those would be the State Water Infrastructure Fund, called SWIFT. That could be a source of drainage. We have a massive drainage issue at I-65 and State Road 28, where we've opened this big area up for development, but now we put sewer and water out to it, but we need to figure out a way to get the storm water away from it. So that's an opportunity. There's another program called the acronym RAISE. It's Rebuilding America's Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity. That is a transportation project fund. So we've challenged our engineers to look for potential road projects or transportation projects that we might be able to utilize there. The great thing about that one, zero match. If we can get a project that qualifies, it's zero local match. So we are focusing on that one. The EDA, the Economic Development Administration, who we worked with to get the $3 million grant for our sewer and water project, received a large chunk of funding. They have not published their rules yet, so we have that on there as a to-be-determined task. And then other projects as yet to be revealed to us, or yet other sources of funding that are still in the process of being fleshed out. So with that in mind, we started down the road of determining what potential uses and projects might be appropriate for use or to consider for use with these funds. We've come up with a top number one, employee bonuses, but that discussion has its own context and questions. Who's going to qualify? How much is appropriate? What are the limitations going to be on length of time of service and when it would apply, who would be eligible? Obviously, the two big ones would be the county annex building, the renovation of that building, the design and build out for that project, and then also the subsequent design and build out of the improvements made to this building as we transition it to more of a judicial center. We've been reached out to by our partners and friends with the state and the city to do an aquifer study. Perhaps the single biggest resource we have in the community is our access to water with the aquifer that goes under the industrial park and out towards I-65. As we start to deal with that water resource in a bigger and bigger way, if we get much more development out there, our usage of water is going to expand. We feel like it's important to know to be able to measure that water resource, know how much is there, how much we're using, what its lifespan will be at that usage rate. So the state had actually was the one that instigated this discussion, reached out to us, asked if we and the city through the utility would partner with them to come up with an aquifer study to measure this resource. You've heard a lot of talk over recent weeks and months about the Career Tech Center opportunity and its possibility through READY grant funding. That READY grant would require a grant match, and the city, the county, and the schools have been working together on how we could pool our resources to take, again, some money here and turn it into a much bigger pot of money through that READY grant. The town of Kirkland approached the committee about partnering with them on a wastewater project. They have a failing system. They're getting fined in an amount that's exorbitant and very challenging to them as a town. They've applied for a grant to fix that problem in a more permanent way, not only for the citizens that are there now, but to open that area up for potential development. But that requires a local grant match, and it's really beyond their ability to do on their own. So they have approached the county to be a potential partner in that. As I mentioned before, the drainage improvements at I-65 and State Road 28, this council appropriated in 2019 $1 million, if you'll recall, to take care of the drainage situation in one of the 4 quadrants. So we have 3 other quadrants that still really need to have a stormwater and rainwater solution as we convert that to more of a developed area that has an impervious surface rather than the soil that absorbs the water now. We were approached about considering additional rural broadband investment in the county as we continue to have portions of the county that are underserved and have a difficult time getting good internet service at a time when we have more and more e-learning days at schools and things like that. Grandstand and fairgrounds renovations and safety improvements. This was a project that we do have some money in the budget for from the landfill fund, but as the projects came into the bids came into the commissioners, they were roughly 3 times what our earlier estimates had been, engineers and architects' estimates. And so if we're going to take care of that, we may have to dip into an additional pot of funds. So that's on our list. And then lastly was grant match dollars, as we try to just think about when holding back a pot of money that could be available for use on as leverage on another opportunity. If those opportunities don't present themselves, then they would be available for any of the other uses listed above. So finally, next steps, where do we go from here? We're going to continue, and you have there's 5 pages, 5 pages of additional pots of money that the county needs to research and consider applying to for any of these projects. We need to continue to do our due diligence and research, and we've started down that road of figuring out which ones match the projects that I've listed, which of our projects have a good chance at one of those opportunities for another pot of money. If we could move them out of this list for the ARPA funds and into another pot, then obviously that frees up money for the remaining uses. We're going to continue to monitor for those additional funding opportunities as these other programs flesh out their rules and their application procedures, and just to be ready to know which ones to apply to, because as we've determined, one of the ones that is most appealing and I'm most optimistic about is this SWIFT grant, this State Water Infrastructure Fund. But they just published their rules, and those applications are due April 14th. So there's not much time. These things are going to move fast, and we've got to stay on top of it. And then maybe most importantly for where we stand right now, we've had our initial meeting with Envoy with regard to the project at the Regions Building. They are a few short weeks away from getting us our initial cost estimates for that project, and really I think that is the key piece of information that we don't have, that we need to have, and that everything else will probably build around that number. So that's where we are, what we've done. No concrete actions yet, but we've been active, and we just at this point are continuing to organize and to gather information.
Thank you.
Okay. I appreciate the opportunity to do that. I was going to make that report under the council reports, but this just seemed like a more appropriate time to do it. So any questions from the council or anything that council members, or committee members, we got Commissioner Brewers here as well. Clark, Jeff, Brett, anything you'd want to add to that I may have left out?
Well, I appreciate the explanation, Alan, and it seems to me that when the committee met and going over the goals, objectives. It seemed like there was everything that we wanted to do was like $15 million. So it's kind of like, it's nice to have this pot of money, but there's a lot of homework that needs to be done here. And then when we start talking about this grant money, it's like other communities have maybe went a little too fast. Now that we're starting to see some matching grant money, and so it's kind of like, we need to just do our due diligence, just like you've explained, really, very thoroughly.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
I think you explained it very well. I just reemphasize the fact that, like Jeff said, going slow. We're looking for those other pots of money so that we don't take the ARPA money and use it in the wrong ways. And to hope that we, do the best job possible investing that and improving things for the entire county and the taxpayers.
Commissioner Brewer, anything? Okay. All right. Moving on, next on the agenda, Ed Kripe with a quick discussion about the morgue.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Last year, when the morgue was built, we come in under budget of about almost $6,000. But when the morgue was built, I had the contractor stub in everything for a bathroom. We put that on hold just to make sure everything was good with that. I checked with Britt. That money had since been put back into the general fund. So I was coming to the council to see if we could reappropriate that $6,000 to get that bathroom completed in the morgue. I know John has been out to the morgue and seen it. It'd be nice to get it totally complete so I can have come and see the morgue if anybody wants to come and see it. I know it's kind of, everybody might not want to, but I'd like for the community to see it, especially the elected officials to see it.
Yeah, had this happened a couple of months earlier, Ed would have been able to encumber that $6,000 and it wouldn't have been an issue, but because of the way the timing worked out, that did roll back into the cash balance and we would need to reappropriate for that purpose. Ed called me yesterday to give me a little heads up on why he was on the agenda, and we talked about it. I expressed to him at that time that my opinion was I thought that was an appropriate use or an appropriate, let's finish this thing out and do it right.
Yeah.
And because we had the cost savings, it really is not above what we had originally allocated for this project. So I had no objection to it.
I did go out and look at it, and I want to say to Ed, it looks great, and I'm proud of it. I think even he's mentioned the comment that the doctor that comes and does his autopsies has commented how nice a facility it is.
Yes, Dr. Wolf really loves it.
Yep, so, but one of the things also with the bathroom, it's not just a convenience thing. We talked about this, but if when they come and they have to go to the bathroom, they go through the remaining rest of the facility to get to the
They have to go
bathroom.
clear through the EMA garage.
Yeah,
Go to there.
and there's a door, if they had their own bathroom, they could close that door down and secure it and make it more of a secure facility too. And so it's kind of a safety issue also, but not just a convenience issue. So I think it'd be a great thing to have, a great asset to have to the morgue there.
Not to be lost in all this, Ed, I want to compliment you for having a project that came in under budget. I mean, in this environment, that's kind of an amazing feat. So well done on that aspect.
And actually, previous Commissioner Mark Timmons here, he assisted in that. So, I mean, he helped out tremendously with that. So.
Good job, Mark. Do I have a motion to support Ed's request?
So moved.
Okay. I have a motion by Jake and a second by John that we appropriate $6,000 for the installation of a bathroom at the restroom facility at the morgue. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. We'll note in the minutes that Councilman Hensley has arrived. Okay, thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ed before he steps away? Okay, all right, thank you.
Thanks.
Next up, Sheriff Kelly, commissary expenditure.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Probably one of the most important things that we deal with with our employees and spouses is mental health, and the critical incidents that have occurred in the last 3 years of, it's clear. We've had, shootings and house fires and that, and then with that, we would like to encourage through our medical company that we contract through, Quality Correctional Care, a spousal support group that would meet once a month and provide a clinical social worker for the employees and for the spouses. And this group would kind of be that shelter or shell where people could go to get the care that they need, or to have conversation. And some of the incidents that we've had, from all of the fatalities that we have in the crashes to the fatalities and the fires that we've had in Clinton County, the lasting effect comes to our first responders and to the first responders' families. So it's something that, is important to me as the sheriff and to the employees that are there. We have seen and have had to seek out counseling. We've had to, bring in our chaplains. We've had to bring in and suggest and recommend the employee assistance programs that are available to our employees. But this is sometimes difficult to kind of get people to talk about those critical incidents and how to handle it. So with this will create a close-knit group among the spouses, among the employees, and this would be offered to not just the people that work the road, but it'd also be offered to our correctional facility people that have, the same stresses in a different way. And so this is a program that we would like to encourage and, and get approval to use commissary funds to pay for this. And it'd be through our medical company. And like I say, it's a once a month meeting that they have. And then any outside counseling, we would have a clinical social worker available to us through Quality Correctional Care. And, it's something that I think would be beneficial in the longevity of somebody working, and the issues and the marital issues that arise from different events that happen in our community. So this would provide something on-site right there, at minimum once a month and more if needed. And the cost is actually very small. It's $3,990 is what it would cost for a year. And, and that could be brought in through commissary and paid for through commissary, and be offered to our people there at the facility. So with that, does anybody have any questions?
I only know enough about this to be dangerous, but I do know that as a part of our, correct me if I'm wrong, we have an employee assistance program already through our health coverage. I understand this one would be a little more specific to the first responder and a spousal group. But have you looked into that, what we already have?
Rich, you may not know this, but I have set up with some of your employees to receive.
Yes, I'm clear, and we use that, and the complaint is from people that have used that, not with Clinton County, and basically it's we can't see you for 6 weeks. We can't, we'll get you scheduled, we'll have somebody call you back, and in that time period, when we tell somebody to call this program, and we have used it.
No, I'm speaking of out here at the health center.
Yes, and it's not immediate. That's, that's the feedback I'm getting. It's not immediate.
Okay.
And,
Don't
so
bill for it.
I can't get into their medical.
Well, that's good
I
feedback.
can't get into their health, but if we have that available to them, it's available to them right now. And, and I have 100% faith in Quality Correctional Care to provide those services on request. Not, okay, we'll get you scheduled in 6 weeks. We hope that your mental health stays okay for the next 6 weeks, and we'll see you then. And that's really the biggest complaint that I've had from at least 2 of the employees that, and there's EAP programs offered through, the state of Indiana, offered through your health insurance. But it is something that you will get put on a list, and, and COVID has probably created the majority of that issue, that there's a time where you've got to get in line. Other people are on the same list, and it's not very personable. So this is kind of, and my answer proposed is having a facility, or having it at the facility, having people that are available through our correctional care company.
I appreciate that feedback, and Brett, I want us to follow up on that.
Is your,
Okay.
I'm going to let Ashley speak to
Okay.
some
I
of
just want
this.
to clarify on that a little bit. This came to us through another agency, the Kosciuszko County Sheriff started this program. This is a spousal support group because of all of the critical incidents that we had in 2021, from the NHK incident. We had the deputy this year in the jail officer that was killed in a crash. We had a double fatal house fire. We lost one of our troopers in a fatal house fire with her daughter. We have a lot of things that are going on that are critical incidents involving our officers. And so this is a way to bring in the spouses and help them deal with their officers through these critical incidences in a controlled, safe environment operated by a clinical social worker so that they can all come together and bond and experience and relieve themselves as spouses on our critical incidents, because a lot of them don't know how to deal with their law enforcement officer at home that's just come home from some of the things that we've witnessed in the last year. So this is kind of our response. It's working in other sheriff's offices, and it's an addendum to our medical contract. We're just asking to pay for it out of commissary.
Okay. Any other questions? I appreciate the clarification and the
so this
elaboration.
is just a spouse, like.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Spousal.
And-
Because I got a little
And it would,
mixture
it would,
of
al-
other
but
things
it'd also
going on
include
there.
the officers that are involved in it. So, I mean,
It's a group type setting for
group setting.
counseling to bring in our spouses and help us work through what's going on with the agency, any critical incidences, keep them up to speed on our sheriff's office and up to date and included. And then on top of it, we'll deal through any issues, like marital issues are a big deal in law enforcement. We have a high divorce rate in law enforcement. So it's to work through a lot of topics with a clinical social worker in a safe environment in a group type setting for peer support.
That sounds like a good idea.
So we have a request for $39.90 from the commissary fund that requires council approval. So do I have a motion of support? Okay, I have a motion by Jake to support that program. Do I have
I'll
a second?
second.
Second by Clark. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you for the explanation.
While we're here, I wanted to offer to you our medical savings. I provided to you in 2019 because of the statutory, the medical rebilling. You might recall it was $207,000 savings in 2019. I didn't get the numbers for 2020, but I have them now. So in 2020, the medical rebilling of the inmate medical bills was $168,539.93 in savings back to the county. That's because when we receive those medical bills, we're rebilling them down to the cost of the Medicare reimbursement rate plus 4%. And our 21 savings were astronomical. It was $388,789.51.
Ashley, where does that money go when we get the reimbursement?
That's not a I say reimbursement because that's the federal term. That is money that we've never had to pay out because we're working with the medical company to reduce those medical bills as they're coming in from eye doctor, pharmacy, hospital, any kind of outside services that's not provided in the facility.
So I'm just making sure I understand this. So when we look at that medical and dental line item in the budget, what you're saying is that's what we actually paid. It would have been
That's
the
what we
higher
would have
figure.
paid out of
Yeah.
the 0006. And what we have been paying, we kind of started rearranging our medical bills so that the bills that we are not paying off-site are like our level 6, our DOC, our county felons, that we can apply for reimbursement through like DOC. And those are the ones that we're trying to avoid the off-site cap in our medical contract. So it's really just it's a greater benefit to the facility, so we're not tapping into that line. And when we do tap into that line, it's generally the DOC reimbursement, so we can seek the reimbursement from the state.
Okay. Well, you mentioned a number that was bigger in 2021. Was that COVID related? Was that?
It started that way. That was more or less related to an inmate that was hospitalized.
Okay. Okay. Any questions for Ashley?
I just have one. With regards to the mental health, I just want everyone to realize that the county realized that there were some big things going on, And when the clinic reached out to me to ask if they could go above and beyond, I immediately emailed the commissioners, and the overwhelming response was absolutely do whatever we need to do. If it costs extra, it doesn't matter. I want you to be aware of that. I mean, we have
We're clear.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think what you're doing is perfect and it's great, but the county was so willing to help in any way we could.
And I see that. I see that through the commissioners and through our council. And, you know, and it's difficult when you have an officer that comes to you and says, you know,
It was
I feel like
tremendous.
I'm going downhill here. So it is. And, you know, and sometimes it is to get that, you know, yeah, we'll get you in there. It's going to be 2 weeks. It's going to be
No,
4
I
weeks.
know.
Or to start.
Right.
And some of the 800 numbers that they call, they do have to wait and they get in line. And there's no, and I've called it and talked to one of the supervisors and I asked, will the person get the same person every time? And it's like, no, they get a file and they look through their files, kind of like going to, you know, a help center, and then they look at your previous, you know,
Right.
contacts or previous conversations that you've had. So this is a little bit more personal, but it's more directed towards the spouses and the individual officers. So, you know, it's something I think could really help and
Oh, I
make a big
see.
difference. And it actually probably lessen the cost of our health care through
Sure.
the county.
In that incident specifically, that was one of those things where this came into play, is because we had an officer that was struggling, and wife didn't know how to help. And it creates a lot of tension at home and a lot of relationship issues with the other family members and whatnot. So we appreciate you allowing us to bring this group in for our spouses.
Mr. Dunn, you sent me an email on
Yep.
request on cost on the Sheriff's Office Awards Banquet. We're under budget at $59,7638. There's $83 that we'll probably go over, so it'll be $60,5974 on the
Okay.
$6,000. And the reason why is really, we went over on award certificates. You can only buy them in several hundred or this amount and this amount. So we're going to use those, obviously, for this next year. We keep those. We DIY'd the certificates and did them ourselves, sitting in the office and putting the seals on them and everything else and doing that. So that's where we're at on that cost. There were awards that are going to exceed that by $1,472. I'm going to pay for that myself. And these are awards that are well-deserved and well-earned. But I know we had a budget of $6,000. I'm going to stay at $6,000. I'm going to take care of that myself because 21 was, you know, it's been a year.
Yeah.
And 22 seems like it's starting out a little bit rough as well. So with that, we had a lot of incidents in the county that we try and talk about them at every meeting. We try and bring everybody up to speed. Got everybody's on social media, and I understand that. But we also have officers that are outside of our agency that we also recognize for assisting our officers. And, you know, one incident was with a conservation officer that went into creek that was flooded with a drunk driver sitting in the middle of it. And I was up in Councilman Mink's area up there in Rossville. And so I do believe that those officers need to be recognized in our county. We do recognize that. So with that, I appreciate all the assistance that you guys have, you know, gave us and allowing us to do that and recognize our officers. And but I will get you the itemized portion.
And I
of the email.
appreciate you doing that. I just thought it was important that we kind of
Absolutely.
finish tie that bow up there, that we
Yeah,
appropriated and had the banquet, and here's what it was,
Yep.
so.
And so if anybody has any questions about that, just let me know. And like I say, the excessive amount I'm going to take care of. It's just as we do the Christmas party for our sheriff's office, and I take care of that cost on my own as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Actually, why don't you, well, I'm going to go slightly out of order here, but if we skip one item, Rick, I'll come back to you in just a second, but we have the sheriff's contract is the next item on our
Yes.
agenda, and in case there's a question, I'll have you wait there, but if I could move real quickly down to Resolution 2020-02, that is a resolution to be approved by both the council and the commissioners for the sheriff's contract for 2022. It reflects the number that we agreed upon at budget time, but more importantly, it expresses the methodology for how we came to that number, and it was a fairly lengthy discussion, if you remember, a two-part, 60% of the state prosecutor's salary, but that had its own challenge because the prosecutor's salary changes mid-year on the state schedule. So we said we're gonna use the prosecutor's salary for the first half of the year. And then 10% of the tax warrants served based on the full year amount of the previous year. That was how we came up with the methodology of coming up with the salary amount that's in the contract of $102,043. So this just kind of memorializes that, shows that all parties, commissioners, sheriff, and council are in agreement, and is just sort of an extra layer. It makes it a contract agreement. We used the 60 plus 10 methodology for coming up for the number, but it's still a contract agreement. Does that make sense? Because we're not literally trying to do 10% of every tax warrant that's served. We're just going back to the previous year and using it as a formula. So with that being said, if there's any questions about that document, that methodology, or anything to ask to the sheriff or to me, feel free to ask now. If not, I'd entertain a
I'll make
motion.
a motion that we pass resolution 2022-02.
Second.
Have a motion by Jeff and a second by Joe to approve the sheriff's contract. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. Okay.
Greatly appreciated. And the struggle was 60 and 10 by state statute, and
It's a moving number.
find the happy place where we're at. And believe me, it's not an argument from me. Please understand that if it's not by statute, then it has to be something written as a contract, and that's kind of how we looked at it. So I appreciate your cooperation in getting that done. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda, Rick Campbell. Talk about a small roller.
Well, Rick,
We have a small roller, it's called a finish roller. It's about 36 inches wide, it's not a very big roller, and it's got a little diesel engine in it. But anyway, when we go to use it, we have trouble with it. It usually is something electrical, won't let the parking brake release, or won't let it start, or something. And when we do get it going, we use it for wedging roads, and it's just slow, and you can only dump about 3 trucks, and then you have to fill the thing up with water again. And I was just wondering if I could get a new roller and something a little bit bigger. I have a quote here from January. Of course, I had to get a new quote if I can get one. But if you guys want to look at it,
Well, just share the number if you don't mind.
it'd be about 50,000.
Is that still a 36 inch or is it bigger?
It's a 48,
Okay.
okay.
and I could go a little bit smaller if I need to. I don't want to go over that amount of money.
My only question, Rick, would be, is it so urgent that you couldn't wait till the budget processed for a 23?
No, it's not. It's just something that I wanted to do because we have some wedging that we're going to have to do. And if the little one don't go, then we have to get the big roller out. And then you got to put it on a trailer and transport it.
What is wedging? Is that where you pack the stone next to the pavement on the edges of the road?
So if you have a bad spot in the road, why we go through there with a dump truck at hot mix and spread it. And then we take a broom on a tractor and broom it out, and we have to roll it. We can also use the little roller for rolling stone. It's pretty nice for rolling stone down.
Ordinarily, I'd like to try to wait and do this as part of the budget process. However, in the current inflationary environment we're in, that thing's gonna cost $60,000 if it doesn't already.
Yeah. Well, when
Given that you have the money, you have the cash balance to do it, I don't see any reason why we would delay and just pay a higher price in a year. Anybody care to either add to that or make a motion to that effect?
I'll make a motion that we allow Rick to purchase the new roller.
Okay. A motion by Jake and a second by Mike that we, I guess I don't know whether we ought to put 50,000 when we don't know whether that's still a valid quote or not, but I guess
Right.
let's maybe,
Well, I'm not gonna go over that.
Okay.
If it's over 50,000, if I can't find anything under 50,000, I'm not gonna get it.
okay. So we'll put a not to exceed 50,000 for a roller. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not sure why there is, but there's 2 signature places here, the way that was written.
Okay. There you go. Okay, that brings us down to old business, the monthly additional appropriations.
Star, I heard one of those is a compensation agreement, the other one is a resolution.
Okay,
Is that what?
yeah.
Yeah, it was-
I've got them now, but yeah.
I read through that last night a couple of times. I go, why are we signing it twice?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what the difference is.
I don't either, but.
Okay, well, this is coming back to you guys,
Okay, let me get myself organized here.
There's two of them,
Okay, additional appropriations for March, beginning with the general fund. $6,000 for, this is something we just inadvertently left out of the budget. We have an annual retainer with a company called Data Pit Stop. They do data analysis services for the county. If we need to know impact of a move on the taxpayer, what it might do to tax rates, what kind of money a move might generate, this is the firm that can run compute the numbers across all the parcels that we have and get us additional information. So we need to pay their $6,000 annual fee. That's been in the budget. That's not a new item. We just neglected to somehow get it in there. For the health department, $4,125. We had an expense that was from 2021 that got paid out of the 2022 budget to get the bill paid, and now we need to replenish out of the cash balance the 2022 budget for office rent. I'm sorry, it wasn't just an item, it was for office rent. Sheriff's Office from the Sex and Violent Offender Administration Fund, $4,000 for an equipment upgrade, some smartphone equipment upgrade. We have our quarterly public defender fees, and I try to explain this each time because I know it can get confusing, but we get reimbursement from the state for pauper attorney fees, and sometimes we have to appropriate those monies. But we also attempt to get restitution or some sort of payment back from the individuals that utilize our pauper attorneys' public defender services. And when we get payments from those individuals, we have to appropriate that back to the line item as well, and that's what we have this month. So from the Superior Court, we have $841.94, and from Circuit Court, we have $6,778.97. From the reassessment fund, you'll recall at the last meeting, at the cleanup meeting in December, we gave permission to enter into a contract with Pictometry to do another flyover of the county. You'll see the contract that shows the payment schedule, but at the time of the contract signing, there was to be a 10% down payment. We got them to give us a little bit of flexibility so that we could do this additional appropriation, and Dana had enough money left in her reassessment budget that she offered to pay that initial down payment of $6,835. So that's what we're appropriating here. The remainder of that will be split between CEDAT, reassessment, and the surveyor's office, the plat book fund. And it's in the same prorated ratio that the previous contract had been. So we had this additional payment, and Dana was kind enough to offer with her cash balance to pay for that. Sheriff's sale, we have administrative costs from the vendor that does that. That's $6,000 for, we're appropriating into a line item to make available for use. Our K-9 fund, we have $200. We received a donation that we're appropriating into the line item for use. The Veterans Monument Fund, Joe's asking us to put $2,000 into a miscellaneous expenditures line item, again, so that he has it available for use should there need to be a repair or anything done. This last one, I'm gonna ask Jordan if he'll come up for just a moment and shed a little light on it, but it's what should be the final payment on the RQAW jail feasibility study from the Federal Inmate Housing Fund. I spoke with the sheriff before the meeting about it, and I wanted Jordan to just kind of get us all up to speed on where we stand on that and what we're getting for this investment. We did have an earlier invoice for $6,000. This one is for $22,000 and will represent the last payment that we're going to make here for this. But I just wanted you, if you would, just elaborate on what that study is going to cover.
Yes, so the study is there, I guess the invoice says jail, but it's really a justice feasibility study. and it goes back to October. We had done the initial assessment that we got the 12 to 15 million dollars back in terms of upgrades to the jail facility. And we had had the conversations as part of the BOT of including the annex, the courthouse, and the jail under one BOT. Well, to do that, we needed to look at what we would potentially do with the current jail and a new facility, creating a new facility. And so this is kind of the study to both look at what options would we have to repurpose the current jail into some type of justice facility if we built a new jail. And so it's looking at both that and building a new jail. And the report will outline, they've been working on just all the metrics to figure out how many beds a new jail would need and then what the options for the current jail would be. The total for that, and I apologize, that's the commissioner's fault, we should have communicated better. I thought we had, but we obviously hadn't, was $30,000 for that study. They did an appropriation in January, I believe, so then this is kind of the meat and potatoes of it. We should be having that finalized here in the next month. We have a meeting this week with them over it. So they've interviewed Brett and Nancy both at Community Corrections and Probation and kind of figured out what their needs would be in terms of a facility. Would we be able to bring both of those entities over to the current jail if it turned into some type of justice facility if we built it? So it's kind of all-encompassing future outlook that should be able to be something, a document that the commissioners and council have going forward 5-10 years down the road, whatever that time frame may be for our needs for the community. So,
Any questions for Jordan?
I have one question, Stuart, Mr. Brewer, when, is there gonna be a conversation that I can have with,
RQAW, yeah, so they reached out and they said they never heard back.
I emailed the gal back.
Okay.
Sent, and so I think it's just
Well, that may be the problem, is because she left, didn't she?
Was it Brianna?
Brianna.
Yeah, she did. She left in
So that's
January.
probably the disconnect.
So what I'll do is I'll connect you with Jason Sonderland is the one that has been working on the project. So I can make sure that he has your email.
I'm sure I've got his email too, so I can reach out to him.
Yeah, and that way, he's kind of the project lead. She was the business development person, and they have a new person there, but in terms of the specific
question that I
project,
had
he's
thought of.
the development lead. Yeah, Jason Sonderland, so,
All right.
yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Is this including dispatch too?
Here we go.
Yes, yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. So it'll be the whole facility, yeah, so.
I'd love to have conversations
Okay.
with anybody.
Yep.
Renee,
All
I
right.
can meet with you with that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. I want to make sure that the dispatch gets heard.
Yeah, yep. So,
But I wanted to make, so that, we may have a couple of $1,000s, if we do the math, we did 6 and 22, 28, it was a $30,000 contract.
Yeah.
But we've got professional services line item in the council budget that I wanted to utilize to finish that out. So I wanted everybody to be comfortable and know what we were getting for this, because that's a meaningful number.
Yeah, okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Jordan, for the explanations. And then, last but not least, from the Project 4D incentive program, there's a request for $5,500 for Motorola Solutions Radio for an investigator. And that is your list of additional appropriations for March. Any questions on any of those? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve ordinance number 2022-03.
So moved.
I think you were louder anyway, so I'm going to say Clark had the motion and Jeff had the second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. We have, I believe, just one transfer for approval. That is from the Highway Department, is from one salary position to another, and the amount is $7,584 as a payroll adjustment.
Make motion to approve.
Okay, a motion by Jake, second by Mike. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. As usual, you have in the packet your financial report for the month from the auditor. That we like to have a public record that we have received.
I also enjoyed having this other report for the year 2021, the cash and investments combined section. That was,
So that's
Good.
what that's everything that I put in Gateway.
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
so.
Are we, has the annual report all been done now with Gateway? That's all in? So that's a weight off your shoulders, isn't it? Yeah, okay, good. Great. So,
They like to see that you see it.
yes. So I'd entertain a motion that we receive that report for the month of, be the February report that we received here in March.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, a motion by Jeff that we receive that report. Do I have a second?
Second.
I think I got Joe with the second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. Council reports, I was gonna make that ARPA report, which I did earlier. Any other reports that anybody has? I did ask, I guess I might inform everybody else, we've had a position, a couple of positions on the SHARP working group or SHARP committee, and one of those positions had been Ron. And so I've asked Joe if he was willing to go ahead and step into that position and serve in Ron's place, and he's agreed to do that. So
Yes.
thank you for agreeing to serve with that, on that with John. So we'll look forward to more reports from that group.
I have, have you connected with them to get invited to the Zoom meeting next week? Or maybe it's this week.
Oh,
No.
I told him I'd send it since we got it down.
Okay, yeah, you'll,
Down there. I think we actually,
because I'm still on the mailing list.
Are you?
Yeah. I've asked to be taken off, but
Any other reports?
I'll send it.
Okay. Commissioner reports. Anything else, Jordan, from the commissioners?
I'll just mention the bid we got back for the fairgrounds. We kind of already touched on it a little bit. Came in at 1.6 million. And when I say bid, ideally we would have more than one. We only received one. And the budget was around 500,000. So we're back to the drawing board, having conversations with the design team on what we can do, what we can take out and get closer to that budget, so.
Yeah, and again, looking to see if any of these other pots of money, as we keep calling them, might qualify as a project source, so. Yeah, that was a shocker.
Yeah, I think from some of the feedback, the timing, as we were trying to get some of it done pre-fair and then some of it post-fair, there was some additional cost in moving in and moving out twice. So if we make the project just be post-fair, we should save there. And then there's just some technical stuff in terms of the bleachers that I think hopefully we can amend to get a better scope and potentially have to rebid it, assuming that's the direction we want to go. So there's a few options on the table. Should finalize something, or at least get a better number of what we could do within the budget. Figure out what that exactly is within the next couple of weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And that leaves us with department heads. Any department heads need time with the council? Liz? I did. You started stirring. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Fingers aren't working.
Thank you.
One of these days I'll learn to do the, hand everybody a stack and like take one and pass it down thing. You're not a teacher. Thank you. There's some logic in the approach. All right, so I realize we're March, so I'm a month or so here behind. I got this done last month and just so happened it lined up with this meeting. But I think as most of you recall, since I've been director, I've tried to do this every year for council and then all 5 of the legislative bodies that Area Plan serves. For you new, I just try to sum up what we did in permitting, how much assessed value we increased, some information about violations and volume, and then what was heard by our BZA, sort of to just give you a little bit of the pulse of what's happening in development in a snapshot. So going through this, I analyze the city of Frankfurt and then the area plans, 5 jurisdictions together. So the only area inside Clinton County that isn't included in the analysis is Michigan Town, which we have no data from at all. So combined, Area Plan and the City of Frankfurt issued 1,344 permits in 2021. So that was a slight increase from the year before. Clinton County issued 39 new homes, up from 34, and Frankfurt issued 18, up from 10. And for Frankfurt, that number includes single-family dwelling and duplexes. We did not issue any duplexes in the county. Those were all single-family. 17 new subdivisions and area plan were created, supplying 21 new lots, and that was an increase from 9 subdivisions, including 12 lots. $64,400,799 and an odd 39 cents worth of new valuation, which is down from 2020, but hold on a second before you draw conclusions. That does show a decrease, but then when you break it down in Clinton County, so if you eliminate Frankfurt and Michigan Town, we're at $54,179,347.08, which is up about $11 million, a 19% increase from the year before. In Frankfurt, it's a decrease. However, there was some changeover in staffing over there and not a full realization of the importance of getting valuations in. So I feel like this is important to note. Over 50% of the permits, including a number of large industrial ones, didn't have the valuation data entered. So I actually think this number is significantly better than it was. And we all chatted about it, as we tend to yearly. They're going to try to get those numbers in more consistently next year. It's just not, there's no regulatory reason to try to get wound about that number. So sometimes when your volume's up and it's crazy, it's really easy to miss. But then when we pull the data, kind of leaves us with a black hole, right? So we know their number's higher, we just don't know what it is. So I want to caution everybody not to form overarching conclusions about where we are development-wise, knowing that we're missing that information. My guess is we're more even, or maybe some moderate growth, just spot checking a few of the larger permits that didn't have valuations and kind of what we would have guessed they might have been worth. So in industrial and commercial construction, there was $35,435,130.75, which was a slight decrease. When you break it down, Clinton County, just shy of 30 million. So we were up about $1 million on commercial and industrial. Keeping in mind that NHK happened in 2020, which was a huge valuation increase. So I actually think this is significant because we did not have any single gigantic project in 2021 that by itself would add millions of dollars to valuation. So we managed to be up $1 million without a significant key cornerstone project. So I actually think that is more significant than it appears, even though it's only $1 million, because if we had had another project like NHK, we would have seen a gigantic jump. Of course, when solar pulls their permits here later this year, I would anticipate we're going to see a big jump that then may see a decrease, the year after that, because that's going to be hard to sustain. Again, Frankfurt saw a decrease, but again, we don't think that's accurate. We think they actually held steady or maybe had also some moderate growth. So then I just kind of noted as a reminder that the data is only as good as what's going in. So in this case, I noticed some holes, and I don't want anybody to walk out and say, we shrunk, and in actuality, Frankfurt, I think, is performing right on level with us. If I was to guess, it's just a data recording thing, not a representation of.
Well, I'm glad you explained it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Just by looking at it, it's like, oh.
Yeah, and I did the same thing when I first looked at it. I went, why? And the first thing I did was went back and looked at the data, and yeah, it is just is what it is. And it's not something where they failed to do something important. This is just some side thing we try to track, and when you're busy, it's not the number one problem. So violations, I'm not going to bore you with a year-by-year summary, but at the moment, we've got 54 that are open and unresolved. We're up a bit from 44. I don't know that number is particularly meaningful. It's just kind of when people call in complaints, and what we've got. We did close a couple cases This last year, they were older, so that, you don't really see that reflected in these numbers, but most of our older cases are in litigation, so it's kind of a big deal when we finally resolve one. So, and then as far as Board of Zoning Appeals, we heard 33 cases, which was down from 50, requesting special exceptions and variances. So I would point out something about these numbers. This is not a number that you want to be high. Assuming that we're doing our jobs and we're flagging things that need to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals, special exceptions are things that may or may not be appropriate. So those, they just are what they are. But variances, that's permission to disobey a written standard, to do something differently than what the rules say. So you actually want that number as low as possible, because that indicates the majority of development is following the rules that the county commissioners and the small towns have determined are best for the long-term trends, and fewer exceptions were granted to that. So, and then I broke that down by town or township. If you see a town or township not listed, it just means we didn't have any hearings there. So I don't know if you have any questions for me, but I tried to just give you some interesting data to.
The data gap there, the holes in the assessed value, or the valuation, is that the applicant's responsibility, or is it the?
No, whichever staff member's putting a permit together has to enter that in. And frequently, on both sides, when you ask them that, it catches them off guard. And a lot of times they're like, well, we don't want to give you that information. So there's kind of that back and forth, to be like, well, okay, we just need a ballpark number. We're not going to go out there and be like, well, man, you said 50 cents, but you came in at 30 cents. So, it has nothing to do with the validity of the permit. So what can tend to happen when it's really busy, and we have some missing on our side too, is sometimes that number just gets missed. It's not critical to issuing the permit, has nothing to do with land use or regulation. The only two places where it could come up for conversation are the assessor's office might look at it as some general guideline, but then they have their own formulas for how they determine value. And then this, reporting to get some idea of what kind of assessed valuation increases are being permitted in development, kind of getting your finger on the trigger of what your trends are. So it's helpful information, but it's not critical to getting permits out. So, and with just turnover on the city side, they didn't realize that I was doing reporting every year. So it was not anything in intent or laziness or any other negative, standpoint.
You kind of addressed my point. I
Right,
wanted to know
it
whether we were having a hole at the assessor's office was what I wanted to know.
No, I think it's just one of those where they didn't, because I only do this once a year and I always give them a copy too, they didn't realize that this reporting was done and they didn't realize what field it came off of. So that was just, there's all kinds of things you can put into the permitting system that have no relevance to a permit. So when you think you're busy, you have people coming in and out, everybody's yelling at you. If it's not a field that's critical, it's easy to just be like, okay, that's not important. Let's get what I need from this customer so I can get them moved on and get to the next person. So I know Don said, he said, well, this is really helpful. We'll try to make sure we're getting that field because we want this information next year. So, I would certainly emphasize there was no failure or fault on their part in terms of work. It just.
Well, I guess the overarching takeaway for me is that growth is accelerating or continues to accelerate, and that's what we need, assessed value.
It is. And I really do think Frankfurt's right there with us, very, very close. I don't think there's the disparity these numbers, Don Stock thinks that as well, that they're, based on the projects he's administrated, he thinks they're actually very close, slight growth,
Good, great.
We like this. I like this.
Yeah, this is
When
good.
Renee does this at the end of the year, and I think this is great stuff just to know, and we're kind of numbers people, so it's kind of like, wow, this is.
It's always interesting to me too,
Yeah.
when I do it, and you don't think about it as you're doing your daily job.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Any questions for Liz? Thank you for taking the time.
Not a problem.
Appreciate it very much.
Hope you guys have a great day.
Thank you. Any other department heads? Rodney? Good morning.
I don't have any problem with having it stacked. Following along in Liz's footsteps, I had this, as you see, somewhat tweaked in end of February, but I'm just now getting an opportunity to get it to you. Trying to return back to some normal operational timelines. So what you have there is what would be our state legislated calendar year grants that we operate off of, extraneous of our main budget. and a breakdown of what those were spent on, as well as the percentage. Any of the money that's not used in any of those, first of all, they get sent to us automatically, legislatively mandated twice a year in installments. And any monies, so it's already locally sent to us. And any monies that are not used during that grant year are put into the carryover, which I work with Britt's office and the state to formulate a report that's very similar to this one that tells them what the reconciliation of those amounts were, what's both spent and what's left over, and then put into the carryover. So one item that's on there in the 1206 there is the open door nurse practitioner. We typically donate or contribute $22,000 to their operations each year for the last couple of years now. And we didn't, with all the COVID and everything going on, somehow that 2,000 got missed. I bring it to your attention because likely I'll work with Britt's office and we'll have an additional in this year's budget to try to get that back to them. It's already there. It's just that it didn't get paid to them. So I'll have that additional appropriation coming back from that budget to just ask that we can get that to them this year so they can cover that. I will get I'm actually working on a report on all of our fiscal year grants, which will include most of our COVID, here to you for the next meeting, and be able to get a report out on all of those. Those are all ones that usually end in June 30th of the year, so.
All those reimbursements starting to slow down?
Well, we haven't seen any for a little while. Britt and I and Janet keep a close eye on these extraneous payments that just suddenly shoot through there. We just received one. The last one we received was like 28,000, I believe, 20-some thousand. I would say we're expecting still more, and we among other health departments in the state are saying, where is the rest of the money? But we're trying to be patient and realize a lot of this is, private pay, third-party medical, Medicaid. Medicaid usually runs at least 90 days, no matter what. And with the slamming that they're probably getting from this, likely there is some delay. But, I'm a kind of guy that Dana and I projected what we think numbers will be, but until I get the money, I'm not counting on it. I'm shocked that we've got over about 180-some thousand already of it. But I'm expecting twice that much, so we are tracking that. We are blue. We're back to blue. I know
Good.
Black and red are your normal numbers, are colors you work with, but we are now blue. I got notified this morning with the State Department of Health that our county is now in the blue. So we've moved all the way from the extreme red in the last few months to being back in the blue. So we're starting, as I told the commissioners, we're starting to stand down operations. What does that mean for you folks? Well, hopefully, and Brits, that we're trying to close out some of those grants, and hopefully we'll see a narrowing of all those grants. I mean, it's nice to have the money, but it's an awful lot of juggling and a lot of work that we've gone through additionally in those 2 years to keep the budgetary stuff up to date. So,
Does the governor declaring an end to the public health emergency impact you in any way? Like you have to do business any different or go back to the way it was previously, or?
well, as I spoke to the commissioners yesterday, in Indiana, from the public health standpoint right now, what we're doing is we're saying we've lived with this for 2 years now. We've educated folks as well as we can to its risks, its dangers, what mitigation steps you can take. It's getting to the point where it's moved from pandemic to endemic. So yeah, we're getting to that point where we say we want to try to let everybody be using common sense, use what we've learned and what we know, and try to get back to some sort of a normal life. So I don't think anything other than what we're being guided to do is we're seeing a deployment, or a demobilization of all of our operations in the next couple months. For instance, vaccine clinics are falling off. We're going to put those back into normal operations. But our support as far as the billing, that Zotec system we've been using to bill, that will end in June.
Okay.
So if and the comments made by the state are, if you would like to individually contract with them for further services, you can. So that is what's the key motivator or driver for those reimbursements. So sometime in June, testing's paid for or roughly funded through June, but it's not being used very much right now. So we already have a plan to try to make sure we can keep it available. It's probably the last activity we'll do. We started ramping up with testing, and we'll end with testing because it's a monitoring on both ends. What we do as public health is we're going back to monitoring for the next disease outbreak, whether it be a new strain of COVID or something else. So that's just what we do daily. So we're actually stepping down into our normal operations again. So,
Okay.
and trying to wrap up funding.
Yeah.
I'll be working with Britt because 2 of the grants that we've had for a while, the money's already in our pocket, and the one grant we just got that's the newest, it's a reimbursable, so we'll probably look at opportunities to capture as much use of that as we can before that grant expires as well. So, because the other money's at the local level, it's a forward billing grant as well, so.
Okay.
But other than that, again, thanks for all your support. I'll have that other report ready for you folks, hopefully then by the next meeting.
Okay, very good. Any questions for Rodney?
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other department heads? All right, seeing and hearing none, declare,
One question, one thing. I did ask the Audra Moore, the nurse practitioner at the Associates Health Center, how we, for the county, deal with someone who has a mental health issue. And she did say that they book them as soon as possible if it's outside counseling. They don't have control of that schedule, but we get them connected to the free employee assistance counseling and start medicine if possible or if necessary. She starts the EAP counseling and evaluation for medicine at the appointment. If it's urgent, I place a staff behavioral health consultant while in the office, and they are evaluated by an entire team from IU Health at their same appointment. So I want employees, especially like outside of your office, to know that we want you to seek help. Now, there's a lot going on in the world. Please call them if you need to and utilize it because it's there. And a lot of times they just don't know it's there and available.
thank you for that. Well, might just make a quick note to anybody that might be watching, Monday is the deadline to get their wellness screening for the year, that if employees attend and get that screening, they can get a deduction off of their health insurance premium charge. So just a reminder to do that. So, okay, now,